The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that rose up toward the crystal dome ceiling. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed different air through masks. But all of them looked down at the small group of humans sitting in the newest section of the hall. Kyung-ho adjusted his simple black suit and looked around the massive room. He had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, but the size of this place still made him feel small. Next to him, So-young quietly typed notes on her tablet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat style and her eyes moved constantly, watching every alien face in the crowd. "The humans wish to speak," announced the council speaker, a tall being with 4 arms and skin like blue metal. Its voice echoed through the hall without warmth. Kyung-ho stood up slowly. He was not a tall man, and his black hair was starting to show gray at the edges. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "Thank you, Council Speaker. Earth wishes to join the Trade Federation. We offer our technology in medicine and food production. We ask only for fair treatment and peaceful contact with other worlds." A sound like laughter came from the section where the Velkari sat. They were large beings with red skin and thick muscles. Their leader, Commander Nextar, stood up without waiting for permission. His voice was loud and rough. "The Council wastes time on these soft creatures," Nextar said. "Look at them. Small bodies, thin skin, slow movements. They fight wars with metal sticks and exploding shells. Their ships barely reach their own moon. Why do we even listen to them?" Other aliens began to talk among themselves. Some nodded in agreement with Nextar. Others seemed bored. The humans were clearly not seen as important. But then a voice cut through the noise like a blade. It was old and deep, and it made everyone stop talking. "Because they do not break." All eyes turned to the oldest section of the hall. There sat Elder Voth of the Keth Mori. His people were among the first to travel between stars. They had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. Voth himself was over 800 years old. His skin looked like gray stone, and his eyes held the wisdom of centuries. Voth stood up slowly, using a staff made from some kind of white crystal. When he moved, every being in the hall paid attention. Even Commander Nextar sat down and listened. "I have seen many species in my long life," Voth said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "I have watched the strong conquer the weak. I have seen empires rise from nothing and fall to dust. But in all my years I have learned one truth that few understand." He paused and looked directly at the human section. Kyung-ho felt those ancient eyes studying him, as if seeing something others could not. "Strength is not in muscle or weapons or the size of your ships," Voth continued. "True strength is in the spirit. And humans have something in their spirit that I have rarely seen." "What nonsense is this?" Nextar called out. "They are weak. Their world is small and their technology is basic. My people could conquer them in days." Voth turned to face the Velkari commander. "That is what many have thought about species they wish to destroy. The Zephyrians thought the same about the Court High. The Dravnok believed it about the Tellan colonies. All of them learned the same lesson too late." "What lesson?" asked another voice from the crowd. "That breaking and bending are not the same thing," Voth said. "A tree that cannot bend will snap in a storm, but a tree that bends will survive the wind and grow back stronger. Most species, when you hit them hard enough, will break. Their spirit shatters, their will dies, their hope ends. They surrender or they fall apart." He walked closer to the center of the hall, his crystal staff clicking on the metal floor. "But some species do not break. When you hit them, they bend. They fall down, but they get back up. They learn from the pain. They become harder to break the next time, and if you keep hitting them, something strange happens. They do not just survive. They adapt. They become stronger than they were before." So-young stopped typing and listened carefully. She had heard stories from her grandfather about the wars on Earth, about how people survived terrible times and found ways to keep going. She had never thought of it the way Voth was describing it. "Humans are one of these species," Voth said. "I have studied their history. They have faced ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They have survived diseases that killed millions. They have fought wars that destroyed entire cities. And each time they did not break. They learned. They adapted. They became stronger." The hall was completely silent now. Even the translator machine seemed to hum more quietly. "Their bodies may be small, but their spirits are like metal that becomes harder when you heat it and hammer it. The more pressure you put on them, the stronger they become. This is not weakness. This is the most dangerous kind of strength in the galaxy." Commander Nextar laughed, but it sounded forced. Old stories and old fears. If they are so strong, why do they come here asking for help? Why do they want to join our trade agreements? Strong species take what they want. Because, Voth said, turning back to look at Kyung-ho, they are also wise enough to choose peace when peace is offered. But make no mistake, Commander, if you force them to choose war, you will learn what I have tried to teach you today. Kyung-ho stood up again. He bowed slightly to Elder Voth, then looked around the hall. We come here in friendship, he said. We believe that all species can benefit from working together. We have much to learn from you, and perhaps something to offer in return. We hope for peace and cooperation. Soft words from soft beings, muttered Nextar, but Voth was still looking at the humans. Remember my words, all of you. The humans appear weak because they choose to be peaceful. They seem small because they have not yet been forced to show their full size. Pray that you never give them reason to. The council speaker called for a break, and the various species began to file out of the hall. Kyung-ho and So-young gathered their papers and prepared to leave. Ambassador, a voice called behind them. It was Elder Voth, moving slowly with his crystal staff. A word, if you please. Kyung-ho waited as the old being approached. Up close, Voth's stone-like skin showed the marks of great age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Your people have a saying, Voth said quietly, about bamboo that bends in the wind. Kyung-ho nodded. The green reed which bends in the wind is stronger than the mighty oak which breaks in a storm. Exactly, Voth said. I hope for all our sakes that the galaxy remembers this wisdom, because I fear some will not, and when that day comes, they will learn why bamboo has survived for millions of years while many mighty oaks have fallen. As they walked away, So-young whispered, Do you think he's right? About what might happen? Kyung-ho looked back at the great hall where aliens were still talking in small groups. Many of them were looking at the humans with expressions that seemed less than friendly. I hope we never have to find out, he said. The first bombs fell on Seoul at exactly 0600 hours Earth time. Min-soo was drinking his morning coffee when the windows of his apartment exploded inward. Glass cut his face as he dove behind his kitchen counter. Outside, the sky had turned red with fire and smoke. The attack came without warning. No demands, no messages, no declaration of war. Just death falling from space like rain. Admiral Garthok watched from his command ship as his fleet pounded the human worlds. 1,200 Valkyrie warships had jumped into Earth's solar system at the same moment. They struck Earth, Luna, Mars, and the mining stations in the asteroid belt all at once. This was the crushing dawn strategy that had worked on 17 other species. Damage reports, Garthok commanded. Earth's major cities are burning, his aide reported. Luna base has gone silent. Mars colonies are requesting surrender terms. The asteroid miners are fleeing in their cargo ships. Garthok nodded with satisfaction. Most species surrendered within the first day when they saw this kind of overwhelming force. The humans would be no different, but Min-soo was not surrendering. As more bombs fell on Seoul, he crawled through the broken glass to his emergency radio. His hands shook as he tuned to the emergency frequency. This is Min-soo Park, building coordinator for Sector 7. He spoke into the radio. I have 30 families in this building. We need to get to the subway tunnels. A woman's voice crackled back through the static. This is Emergency Coordinator Jung. The subway system is intact. Move your people underground and set up shelter stations. We're organizing food and medical supplies. Min-soo looked out through his broken window. The street was full of rubble and smoke, but he could see other people moving. They were helping each other, carrying the wounded, leading children to safety. No one was running in panic. No one was screaming for surrender. On Luna base, Colonel Tae-wan was dealing with his own problems. The Valkyrie had hit the base with plasma cannons, destroying half the living quarters and cutting the main power grid. Emergency lights flickered in the command center as reports came in from across the moon. Sir, his communications officer said, we're getting surrender demands from the alien fleet. They want us to shut down all weapons and open our docking bays. Tae-wan looked around the damaged command center. Most of his staff were injured, and they had maybe 6 hours of life support left. By all military logic, they should surrender. Send this message to all Luna stations, he said calmly. Ignore the surrender demands. Switch to emergency protocols. We're going underground, sir? The mining tunnels, Tae-wan explained. Luna has thousands of kilometers of mining tunnels. We'll move our operations there, set up the emergency transmitters. We keep fighting. On Mars, Engineer Yoon-ji was staring at her destroyed laboratory. The Velkari bombardment had smashed her research facility, but the terraforming equipment in the lower levels was still working. She had an idea that would have been crazy under normal circumstances. "Can we reverse the atmospheric processors?" she asked her assistant Junho. "Reverse them? Why would we?" Junho stopped as he understood what she was thinking. "You want to turn them into weapons. The processors create high-pressure gas mixtures for terraforming," Yunji said. "If we modify the output valves and add some chemical components from the lab, we can create gas clouds that will damage their ships when they land. That's insane. It might work, but it's insane." "Good," Yunji said, already moving toward the equipment. Insane is what they won't expect. Admiral Garthok was starting to feel confused. It had been 12 hours since the attack began, and the humans had not sent a single surrender message. Their military was destroyed. Their cities were burning. Their colonies were cut off from each other. What were they waiting for? "Status report," he demanded. "Earth's cities are still burning, but we're detecting organized movement in the underground areas," the aide reported. "Luna base went silent, but we're picking up strange transmissions from the dark side of the moon. Mars is..." "Well, sir, something unusual is happening on Mars." "What do you mean unusual?" "Our landing teams report that the air around the colonies has become toxic. 3 of our scouts have been killed by some kind of gas that seems to appear from nowhere." Garthok felt a small chill of worry. This was not how conquered species usually behaved. In space near Jupiter, Captain Hyunwoo was pushing his damaged ship toward the massive Velkari dreadnought that had destroyed most of his squadron. The UES Indomitable was dying, its engines failing, its hull cracked open to space. Half his crew was dead. His communications officer looked at him with desperate eyes. "Captain, the evacuation pods are ready. We can still get out." Hyunwoo looked at the massive alien ship on his screen. It was 10 times the size of his vessel, bristling with weapons, but it was also moving slowly, confident that the small human ship was no longer a threat. "Negative," Hyunwoo said calmly. "Set collision course. Maximum power to forward shields." "Sir, that's suicide." "No," Hyunwoo said, his hand steady on the controls. "That's sending a message." The Indomitable struck the Velkari dreadnought at nearly 30% of light speed. The explosion could be seen from Earth. Back on Earth, Minsu had organized his entire building sector. They had moved 300 people into the subway tunnels and connected with other groups throughout the city. Someone had found medical supplies. Others had located food stores. A few people had military training and were teaching others how to use weapons they had salvaged. "The aliens are landing troops in the city center," reported a woman who had been a police officer before the attack. "They expect us to come out and surrender." "Let them land," Minsu said. "The subway system connects to the sewers, the utility tunnels, and the old fallout shelters from the 1950s. They think they're conquering a city. What they're actually walking into is a maze that we've known since we were children." On Luna, Colonel Tae-wan had moved his entire base into the mining tunnels. The Velkari had landed troops on the surface and were searching the damaged base, but they had found only empty rooms. Meanwhile, Taiwan's people were setting up a new command center 3 kilometers underground. "We have communication with 17 mining stations across Luna," his communications officer reported. "The aliens control the surface, but they don't even know we're here." "Good," Tae-wan said. "Start mapping their patrol routes. Begin salvage operations on their crashed scout ships. If we're going to live down here, we need to learn how their technology works." Admiral Garthok paced his command deck with growing frustration. 72 hours had passed since the attack began. By now, every other species had either surrendered or been completely destroyed. The humans were doing neither. "Report," he barked. "Earth's surface cities are under our control, but our ground troops report constant attacks from underground. They can't locate the human command structure because it seems to be everywhere and nowhere. Luna appears empty, but our ships keep detecting power signatures that vanish when we investigate. Mars colonies have been abandoned, but our landing teams keep getting killed by booby traps and toxic gas." "What about their space fleet?" "Destroyed, sir, but..." The aide hesitated. "But what?" "They keep ramming our ships, sir. Even when their vessels are completely disabled, they use them as weapons. We've lost 6 major ships to ramming attacks. The crews seem to prefer death to capture." Garthok stared out at Earth through his viewport. It looked peaceful from space, blue and white and beautiful, but he was beginning to understand that looks could be deceiving. On Earth, So Young was coordinating with resistance groups around the planet from a hidden bunker in the mountains. As Kyung-ho's former aide, she had access to diplomatic communication codes that the aliens didn't know about. "Status report from all sectors," she said into her encrypted communicator. The reports came in from around the world. London, Berlin, Tokyo, New York, Sydney. Every major city was following the same pattern. The aliens controlled the surface, but the humans had gone underground. And in the tunnels and sewers and forgotten places, they were learning. "We've recovered alien weapons from 17 crash sites," reported the Tokyo group. "Engineering teams are studying them." "Paris group has captured 3 alien soldiers," came another report. "They're being questioned about their technology and tactics." "Moscow reports successful sabotage of alien supply depot," said a third voice. So Young looked at the map on her screen. It showed hundreds of red dots where alien forces were located, but thousands of blue dots where human resistance cells were operating. The aliens thought they had conquered Earth. What they had actually done was anger 4 billion people who had nowhere left to run. And humans, when they had nowhere left to run, had a tendency to fight back. On his command ship, Admiral Garthok received a message from the Velkari High Command. They wanted a progress report. They expected to hear about humanity's surrender and the beginning of resource extraction operations. Instead, Garthok had to report that his victory was turning into something else entirely. Something that made him remember old warnings about species that did not break. Something that made him wonder if attacking humanity had been the biggest mistake the Velkari had ever made. 6 months after the invasion, Admiral Garthok stared at reports that made no sense. According to his data, the Velkari Empire controlled Earth, Luna, Mars, and 12 asteroid mining stations. According to reality, his forces were dying every day and achieving nothing. "Explain this to me again," he said to his intelligence officer. "Sir, we control all major population centers, but the humans refuse to acknowledge this fact. They continue operating as if they are winning the war. How many humans have we captured?" "Approximately 50,000, sir." "And how many have provided useful intelligence about their military structure?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "None, sir." Garthok felt a headache building behind his eyes. "None? In 6 months, not one human has told us anything useful?" "No, sir. They seem to have a different attitude toward capture than other species. Instead of becoming demoralized, they appear to study us. Several captured humans have been caught examining our equipment and asking our guards technical questions about our weapons and ships." In the ruins of Seoul, Dong-hyun was indeed studying his captors. He had been a history teacher before the invasion, but now he was something else entirely. The Velkari had made the mistake of putting all their human prisoners in the same facility, and Dong-hyun had used his teaching skills to organize them. "Report," he whispered, to the woman next to him during their daily work. "Assignment." Yoon-suk learned that their plasma weapons overheat after sustained fire, she whispered back. "About 40 seconds of continuous use, then they need a cooling period." "Good. What else?" "Their body armor has weak points at the joints." And Jinwoo figured out their shift patterns. "Guard change happens every 8 hours with a 5-minute gap in coverage at the eastern gate." Dong-hyun nodded. The Velkari thought they were using humans as slave labor to repair their ships. What they were actually doing was giving humans direct access to alien technology and plenty of time to study it. Meanwhile, in the underground tunnels beneath Seoul, Min-soo had turned his civilian rescue operation into something that resembled a military command structure. He had linked up with similar groups under every major city on Earth, creating a network that the Velkari still didn't understand existed. "Incoming transmission from London," his communications specialist announced. It was Na-young, a former computer programmer who had learned to modify alien communication equipment. "London here," came the encrypted voice. "We've successfully interfaced human computers with captured Velkari data systems. We can now monitor their fleet movements in real time." "Excellent," Min-soo responded. "Tokyo reports they've reverse-engineered the alien medical scanners. Apparently, Velkari have a severe allergic reaction to certain Earth fungi. Sydney has weaponized that information," came another voice on the channel. "They've created spore-based gas grenades. Field test results are very promising." On Luna, Colonel Tae-wan had transformed his military base into something that would have impressed generals throughout human history. Living entirely in the mining tunnels, his people had not just survived, they had thrived. Status report, he requested from his underground command center. We now control 47% of Luna's subsurface tunnel network, reported his engineering officer Sang-wook. We've established manufacturing facilities using a combination of human knowledge and alien technology. The fusion reactors are producing twice their original power output. Weapon status? We've successfully modified 18 alien plasma rifles for human use. More importantly, we've figured out how to build our own. The first batch of Luna-manufactured weapons will be ready in 2 weeks. What about the surface? The aliens still think they control it, Sang-wook said with a slight smile. But we've placed monitoring devices near all their installations. We know exactly where they are at all times. They, on the other hand, still have no idea we're here. Taewon looked at the tactical display showing Luna's surface. Red dots marked alien positions, while blue lines showed the vast tunnel network his people now controlled. The Velkari held the surface of the moon, but the humans owned everything underneath it. On Mars, Yoonji had become something between an engineer and a general. Her improvised chemical weapons had evolved into sophisticated systems that made large areas of Mars completely hostile to Velkari forces. The atmospheric processors are working better than expected, she reported to Junho. We can now create localized environmental conditions that are lethal to Velkari but harmless to humans. How? The respiratory systems are adapted to high oxygen, low nitrogen environments. Our processors can create pockets of low oxygen, high methane atmosphere that suffocate them in minutes. To us, it just smells bad. What about their equipment? Even better news. The methane corrodes their metal alloys. Any Velkari equipment left in the affected areas starts falling apart within hours. Yoonji looked out at the Martian landscape through her underground facility's periscope. The surface looked empty and dead to the Velkari satellites watching from orbit. In reality, it was covered with invisible chemical traps that made it impossible for alien ground forces to operate. Effectively, Admiral Garthok was receiving increasingly desperate reports from his ground. "Commanders, sir," his aide reported. "General Kolthek requests immediate reinforcement for the Earth occupation force. He reports that human resistance activities are increasing rather than decreasing. How is that possible? We destroyed their military 6 months ago." The general believes the humans are operating under a completely different military philosophy than other species. Instead of having a centralized command structure that we can destroy, they appear to have thousands of small, independent groups that coordinate with each other. Garthok pulled up tactical displays of Earth. Instead of the clear red zones that should indicate Velkari control, the map was a confusing mix of red and blue dots scattered everywhere. What about their technology level? This is the concerning part, sir. Intelligence reports indicate that human weapons are becoming more sophisticated. They appear to be learning from captured Velkari equipment and improving upon it. Improving upon it? Yes, sir. Our weapons are designed for our physiology and our tactics. The humans are redesigning them for their own use and, in some cases, making them more effective than the originals. In Tokyo, Dr. Yunseo was working on exactly that kind of project. She had been a medical researcher before the invasion, specializing in nanotechnology. Now she was applying those same skills to warfare. The alien medical nanobots are actually quite sophisticated, she explained to her team. They're designed to repair Velkari cellular damage. But with some modifications we can reprogram them. Reprogram them to do what? To attack Velkari cellular structure instead of repairing it. We can turn their own medical technology into a biological weapon. Her assistant, Kwang Ho, looked impressed. How do we deploy it? Through their water supply, their air recyclers, even through contact with contaminated surfaces. The nanobots are designed to spread through Velkari biological systems. They just won't be healing anymore. Across the galaxy, Elder Voth of the Kethamori received a secret communication from So Young, who had become Earth's underground coordinator for off-world communications. Elder, her voice came through encrypted channels. We remember your warning to the Council. We also remember that you seem to understand humans better than others. I am listening, young one. We need allies. Not to fight for us, but to provide information and perhaps some technology that could help us end this war more quickly. Voth considered this carefully. What do you offer in return? Knowledge, So Young replied. We are learning things about Velkari technology and tactics that other species never had the chance to discover. We are willing to share this information with species that have suffered under Velkari aggression. And if the Velkari discover this cooperation, then they will learn that attacking humanity was not just their biggest mistake, but their last mistake. The old Kethmori elder felt something he had not experienced in centuries: hope. The humans were not just surviving. They were becoming something new. Back on his command ship, Admiral Garthok received the message he had been dreading. High Command wanted a full report on the conquest of human space. They expected to hear about new resources being extracted, about slave populations being processed, about another successful Crushing Dawn operation. Instead, Garthok had to report that his forces were being slowly ground down by an enemy that refused to accept defeat. An enemy that was learning from every encounter and becoming more dangerous over time. He thought about Elder Voth's warning at the Galactic Council. Something about humans not breaking under pressure. At the time, it had seemed like the superstitious fears of an old species. Now, as he looked at casualty reports and watched his victory turn into a nightmare, Garthok began to understand what the ancient Kethmori had been trying to tell them. The humans were not broken. They were not even bent. They were adapting, and that was the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. 1 year after the invasion, Colonel Taiwan stood in the command center of Luna Base. Not the ruins on the surface that the Velkari had destroyed, but the new facility built 3 kilometers underground. On his tactical display, he watched 30 human ships approach the moon, ships that had been Velkari vessels just weeks ago. Fleet status? He asked his communications officer. Admiral Hyun Seo reports all vessels are ready, came the reply. The retrofitting is complete. All ships are now operating with hybrid human Velkari technology. Taiwan smiled. Hyun Seo had been a captain when the war started. After her ship was destroyed, she had spent months studying captured Velkari technology from a resistance base on Europa. Now she commanded a fleet that was about to show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they set their minds to it. Begin the operation, Taiwan ordered. Admiral Garthok was reviewing casualty reports when his sensors detected the approaching human fleet. He almost laughed. 30 small ships against his remaining force of 200 Velkari vessels. The humans were finally making the kind of military mistake he understood. All ships prepare for battle, he commanded. This will be over quickly. But as the human ships came closer, Garthok began to notice things that didn't make sense. The vessels looked like modified Velkari designs, but they were moving in formation patterns he had never seen before. Their energy signatures were stronger than they should be, and they were approaching at attack vectors that seemed impossible for ships of that size. Admiral, his tactical officer called out, those ships are accelerating beyond normal parameters. Their engines shouldn't be able to produce that kind of thrust. Explain. It appears the humans have modified our propulsion systems. They're generating approximately 40% more power than the original designs. Garthok felt a familiar chill of worry.
How is that possible?
He got his answer when the first human ship opened fire. The plasma beam that struck his flagship was not the standard Velkari weapon he expected. It was something new, brighter, more focused, and considerably more powerful. Admiral Hyun Seo watched from her command ship as her fleet engaged the Velkari forces around Luna. Each human vessel was smaller than its enemy counterparts. But that was exactly the advantage she had planned for. All ships. Execute pattern Delta, she commanded. The human fleet scattered like a school of fish, each ship moving independently, but as part of a larger coordinated attack. The Velkari had been expecting a traditional fleet engagement, where larger ships with bigger guns would dominate. Instead, they found themselves trying to track 30 highly maneuverable targets that attacked from unpredictable angles. Target their power systems, Hyun Seo ordered. Remember, we want their ships intact if possible. This was the crucial difference between human and Velkari tactics. The Velkari fought to destroy their enemies completely. The humans fought to capture and learn from their enemies' technology. Engineer, Yoonji watched the battle from her underground facility on Mars. She was simultaneously coordinating chemical attacks against Velkari ground forces and providing technical support to the Luna fleet via quantum communication. Hyun Seo, this is Mars base, she transmitted. We're detecting Velkari reinforcements jumping into the system. 12 heavy cruisers. Understood, came the reply. Are your atmospheric weapons ready? Better than ready, Yoonji said with satisfaction. We've been preparing a surprise for any Velkari ships that try to land on Mars. The Velkari reinforcements arrived exactly as Yunji had hoped they would. Seeing that the Luna battle was not going as expected, they decided to establish a base on Mars to coordinate a counterattack. It was a logical military decision that would have worked against any other species. But humans were not any other species. As the Velkari ships entered Mars orbit, they encountered what appeared to be normal atmospheric conditions. The planet's air was thin as expected, but breathable with proper equipment. They began landing troops and setting up temporary bases. Within 6 hours, every Velkari soldier on Mars was dead. "Report," Admiral Garthok demanded as he watched his reinforcement fleet go silent. "Sir, it appears the Martian atmosphere has been weaponized. Our troops are reporting equipment failure, followed by respiratory distress, followed by complete loss of communication. How do you weaponize an entire planet's atmosphere?" "We don't know, sir. But satellite imagery shows that our landing sites are now covered with some kind of corrosive fog. Any equipment we left behind is dissolving." Meanwhile, the battle for Luna was reaching its conclusion. The human fleet had captured or destroyed most of the Velkari ships, and Colonel Taiwan's ground forces were emerging from their tunnels to secure the surface installations. But the real victory was not in the ships they had captured or the territory they had reclaimed. The real victory was in what the galaxy would think when they heard about it. Elder Voth of the Kethmori received the news through his secret communication network. The humans had not just won a battle, they had demonstrated capabilities that no one had expected. Ships that were faster and more powerful than their Velkari counterparts. Tactics that turned traditional military doctrine on its head. Weapons that could make entire planets uninhabitable to specific species. "Remarkable," he said to his aide. "Contact the other elder races. It is time for us to make a decision." On Earth, Minsu coordinated the celebration from his underground command center in Seoul. The victory at Luna had been broadcast to every resistance cell on the planet, and morale was higher than it had been since the invasion began. But Minsu was already thinking about the next phase of the war. "Status report from all sectors," he requested. The reports came in from around the world. The Velkari still controlled the surface of most major cities, but their grip was weakening every day. More importantly, human technology was advancing at an unprecedented rate. "Berlin reports successful completion of the new plasma rifle design," came one report. "It's 30% more efficient than captured Velkari weapons." "Tokyo has finished reverse engineering their shield generators," came another. "We can now protect entire city blocks from orbital bombardment." "Moscow reports breakthrough in propulsion technology," said a third voice. "We can build ships that are faster than anything the Velkari have." Minsu looked at the global situation map on his screen. A year ago it had shown a completely red Earth, indicating total Velkari control. Now it was a complex pattern of red and blue, with blue areas growing larger every day. In her hidden laboratory in Tokyo, Dr. Yoon Seo was putting the finishing touches on her latest project. The weaponized nanobots had been successful, but she had developed something even more effective. "The new nanobots don't just attack Velkari biology," she explained to her team. "They reprogram it. Any Velkari who comes into contact with them will find their own immune system turning against them. How do we deploy them?" "Through their food supply, their water systems, even through the air recyclers on their ships. The nanobots are programmed to spread through any biological contact. Within a few weeks, we could potentially affect every Velkari in the solar system." But Yoon Seo hesitated before authorizing deployment. This was not just a weapon, it was potentially genocide. The nanobots could theoretically wipe out the entire Velkari species if they spread beyond the solar system. She contacted So Young through the Resistance Network. "We need to discuss the ethical implications of this weapon." So Young's response was immediate. "Can it be reversed? Can we turn it off if we choose to?" "Yes, with the right counteragent. Then we hold it in reserve," So Young decided. "We don't use it unless we have no other choice, but we make sure the Velkari know we have it." This decision would prove to be crucial in the weeks that followed. Admiral Garthok sat in his damaged command center, staring at reports that painted a picture he could barely comprehend. His invasion force had been reduced by 70%. His supply lines were being constantly attacked by human raiders using improved versions of his own technology. 3 entire planets in the system were now effectively controlled by human resistance forces. But the most disturbing news was coming from his intelligence division. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we've detected quantum communication signals between the humans and several other species in the galaxy." "Which species?" "The Kethmori for certain. Possibly the Talmarian Republic and the Sindari Collective. It appears the humans are sharing intelligence about our military capabilities." Garthok felt his world shifting beneath him. If the humans were forming alliances with other species, especially species that had their own conflicts with the Velkari Empire, then this war was about to become something much larger and more dangerous. "Sir," another officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human resistance. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. Put it through." So Young's voice filled the command center, speaking in clear, unaccented Velkari. "Admiral Garthok, this is the human resistance. We wish to inform you that we have developed weapons capable of ending this war immediately. Weapons that could eliminate every Velkari in this system within a matter of weeks." Garthok felt his blood freeze. "However," So Young continued, "we choose not to use these weapons. We offer you one opportunity to withdraw from human space with honor. You have 7 days to consider this offer. If you do not accept." 18 months after the invasion began, Admiral Hayun Seo stood on the bridge of her flagship as it approached the Velkari home system. Behind her followed a fleet of 200 ships, vessels that combined the best of human engineering with captured alien technology, improved and refined beyond their original specifications. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we're detecting massive Velkari fleet movements throughout their territory. It appears they're gathering every available ship for a final defense of their homeworld." Yunseo nodded calmly. She had expected this. The Velkari were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that had not just survived their crushing dawn strategy, but had turned it into a learning experience. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Begin formation Omega. Let them see what we've learned from them." On the Velkari homeworld, Commander Nextar, now Supreme Admiral after the disgrace of Garthok, watched the approaching human fleet with a mixture of disbelief and growing terror. These were not the small, primitive ships that had barely reached their own moon 18 months ago. These were vessels that moved with predatory grace, their hulls gleaming with armor that his sensors could barely penetrate. "How many ships?" he asked his aide. 200 confirmed, Supreme Admiral, but our intelligence suggests they have production facilities throughout human space that are building more every day. 200, Nextar repeated. "We lost to them when they had none." The truth of that statement hit him like a physical blow. The humans had started this war with essentially no space fleet. They had built one from scratch using Velkari technology as a foundation, then improved it beyond recognition. On Earth, So Young coordinated the war effort from the rebuilt Seoul Command Center. The surface of Earth was finally under human control again, but the scars of the invasion had been transformed into something else. "Monuments to human resilience. Status. Report from all fronts," she requested. "Mars reports complete. Environmental control," came Yunji's voice from the red planet. "Any Velkari vessel attempting to land will face atmospheric conditions that dissolve their equipment in minutes." "Luna Base reports full operational capacity," added Colonel Taewan. "Our shipyards are producing 12 new vessels per month, each one more advanced than the last. Tokyo Research Division has completed the new generation of nanobotic weapons," reported Dr. Yoon Seo. "We can deploy them if necessary, but I strongly recommend we continue to hold them in reserve." So Young looked at the strategic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked Velkari positions, but they were surrounded by an ever-growing network of blue dots representing human allies. The Kethmori had been the first to openly support humanity, followed by 3 other species that had suffered under Velkari aggression. But it was not just military support they were providing. It was something much more valuable: recognition. "We have a message from the Galactic Council," reported her communications officer. "They're requesting a meeting to discuss the current conflict." So Young smiled. A year ago, the Council had dismissed humans as insignificant. Now they wanted to negotiate. It was a clear sign of how much the galaxy's perception had changed. Meanwhile, in the underground resistance networks that had become humanity's trademark, Dong-hyun was leading a very different kind of operation. He had been transferred from his prison camp to a facility on a Velkari colony world, where he was supposed to be teaching captured humans to work as technicians. Instead, He was teaching them to be insurgents. Remember, he said quietly to his class of 30 humans, we are not here to serve them. We are here to learn everything we can about their society, their technology, and their weaknesses. One of his students, a young woman named Hyejin, raised her hand. Teacher, I've been assigned to work on their communication systems. I think I can modify them to broadcast our signals. Excellent, Donghyun said. What else have you learned? Their power grid has a central control system, said another student. If we could access it, we could shut down the entire colony, finished a third. Donghyun nodded approvingly. This was what the Velkari had never understood about humans. You could capture their bodies, you could force them to work, but you could not break their spirit or stop their minds from working. And human minds, when focused on a problem, were terrifyingly effective. Back in the Velkari home system, Supreme Admiral Nextar was receiving reports that confirmed his worst fears. The human fleet was not just approaching, it was demonstrating capabilities that should have been impossible. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human ships are moving in formations we've never seen before. They appear to be sharing shield strength across multiple vessels. When we focus fire on one ship, the others somehow absorb part of the damage. What about their weapons? More powerful than our own, sir. And they seem to adapt in real time. When we deploy countermeasures, their weapons adjust to compensate within minutes. Nextar stared at the tactical display. The human fleet was arranging itself in a pattern that looked almost like art. It was beautiful, elegant, and absolutely deadly. Open a communication channel, he ordered reluctantly. Admiral Hyun Seo appeared on his screen, and Nextar was surprised by what he saw. She was not a large or intimidating figure. She looked like she could have been a teacher or a scientist before the war. But her eyes held a confidence that made him deeply uncomfortable. Supreme Admiral, she said in perfect Velkari, I am Admiral Hyun Seo of the Human Defense Fleet. I believe you have something that belongs to us. What do you want? Nextar asked. The immediate release of all human prisoners, Hyun Seo replied. The withdrawal of all Velkari forces from human space, and reparations for the damage caused by your invasion. And if we refuse? Hyun Seo's expression did not change, but somehow her presence seemed to fill the screen. Then you will learn why Elder Voth warned the Council never to attack humans. You will learn why we do not break. As if to emphasize her point, the human fleet suddenly shifted formation. In seconds, they had surrounded the entire Velkari home fleet, moving with precision that should have required months of coordination. How? Nextar whispered. We learned from you, Hyun Seo said simply. Every tactic you used, every strategy you employed, every piece of technology you deployed against us. We studied it all. We improved it all. And now we're going to show you what happens when humans have had time to think. The battle that followed was not really a battle at all. It was a demonstration. The human ships moved through the Velkari fleet like surgeons, disabling weapons, destroying engines, but carefully avoiding life support systems. They were not trying to kill their enemies. They were trying to capture them intact. Within 6 hours, the entire Velkari home defense fleet was floating helplessly in space. But the most terrifying part for Nextar was not the efficiency of the human attack. It was the restraint they showed. They could have destroyed every Velkari ship, killed every crew member, reduced his homeworld to ash. Instead, they chose mercy. On Earth, Min-Soo watched the battle reports with mixed feelings. The victory was complete, but he remembered the fear and destruction of the early days of the invasion. He remembered hiding in subway tunnels while his city burned above him. It's over, his aide said. The Velkari are requesting terms of surrender. Min-Soo looked out the window of his rebuilt command center. Seoul stretched out below him, its skyline changed by the war but not broken. New buildings rose alongside repaired old ones, and the streets were full of people going about their lives. No, he said quietly. It's not over. It's beginning. Sir, for the first time in human history, we're not alone in the galaxy, Min-Soo explained. We have enemies who respect us, allies who support us, and technology that can take us to any star we choose. The question is not whether we won this war. The question is what we do with the peace that comes after. Across the galaxy, Elder Voth received the news of humanity's victory with satisfaction, but not surprise. He had tried to warn the Council, tried to tell them that humans were different from other species. Now the galaxy would have to learn to live with that difference. He activated his communication system and sent a message to So Young on Earth. "Young human," his message said, "you have proven what I tried to tell the Council long ago. Your species does not break. But now comes a greater challenge. Victory is easy to achieve when you are fighting for survival. The true test of strength is what you do when you no longer need to fight." So Young read the message and understood what the old Keth Mori was telling her. The war had forged humanity into something new, something stronger. But strength without wisdom was just another form of weakness. The galaxy was watching to see what humans would do with their newfound power. And humans, as they had proven time and again, did not disappoint those who had faith in them. They chose to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm, to lift up rather than tear down. They chose to prove that unbreakable did not mean unmerciful, and in doing so, they began to earn something even more valuable than victory. They began to earn respect.